Hello everybody! Welcome back to another MandoLessons live. Saturdays at noon is when these happen. Great to see you all here. Looks like we got a bunch of people already. Picker's Quest is in the house. We got Peter from Oregon, Sheldon from Little Falls, Minnesota, Mike from Tennessee, Denise from Michigan, Asia, apologies for mispronouncing your name, from Tel Aviv, very cool. Robert from Plymouth, Mass, Chris from Michigan. All right, great to see you all here. Picker's Quest is coming in from Wisconsin. Excellent. Well, if any of you haven't been here before, I'm seeing lots of familiar names at this point, but if anyone here hasn't been here, this is an hour-long live question and answer. Anything you got related to mandolins, music, learning to play music, you know, any of that stuff, it's all fair game. I love hearing what everyone's been working on. So throw questions at me as fast as you can, and I'll do my best to keep up. I can take requests. I'll play some tunes along the way. I only do stuff that's in the public domain, so no cover songs, stuff like that. But happy to play it if I can and if I know it, which I don't know that I will, but it's worth a shot. And sometimes I just try to make it up anyway. Great. Awesome. Kevin from Plymouth, UK. Very cool. All right, so that first tune I led in with there is Top of Maul? I don't know how to say it. It's M-A-O-L. It's a great Irish polka that I learned from... Oh, what's that guy's name? I'll think of his name at some point here. A great album from a Boston-based fiddle player. Wow, it's not coming to me. All right, Picker's Quest is how about some Julianne Johnson this week? Yeah, I'll play a little bit of Julianne Johnson. Great old-time tune in the key of D. There it is, a little bit of Julianne Johnson. One of the first old-time tunes I ever learned. It's a great one. Key of D, one of those tunes you can play in 2 octaves, which is always fun if you know the tune but haven't tried it down an octave. Give that a try. All right, we got a request for Louis Cyr. I will get to that in a second. Great tune. Don says, do you have any suggestions for improving my tune memorizing ability? Thanks, Don from Plymouth, Minnesota. Lots of Plymouths. Yes, indeed. Great. Great question. That's a question I get a lot. There's kind of a couple answers. I guess there's I think like the main thing you can do is to really do it every day, even if it's just a little bit, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes of just like trying to get a part of a tune, just improving your ear and your ability to hear a phrase, excuse me, hear a phrase and play that phrase back. You know, a lot of the tunes that I've learned over the years, I haven't necessarily sat down and learned in one sitting. You know, a lot of times I'll go to an Irish session and hear a tune I've never heard before and say, "Oh, that's a nice tune. I like it." Kind of picks up to my ear, and I say, "Oh, that's one I'd like to learn." And maybe I'll like just kind of strum and figure out what key it's in, and then maybe next week I'll go back, or a couple weeks later I'll go back and it'll get played again, or I can ask somebody what the name is and go home and work on it my own. But if I forget to ask the name or can't find it online, I'll go back a couple weeks later and, "Oh, it's that tune again." You could ask people to play it again. Say, "Oh, I remember it's in the key of D." Maybe get a little phrase. It's an old time tune, but let's say we're at an old time jam this time. You know, so you maybe get that one phrase, and then you get a little bit of that B part. You know, you've got 20% of the tune, and you kind of do that every time you revisit the tune. It's not something that happens. You know, when you sit down with one of my videos, you might learn a tune in a sitting, which is great, but it doesn't necessarily mean it'll stick in your head. That's kind of like the cramming for a test example. It really requires that repetition. So once you learn a tune, really playing through it a bunch. Don't just play it through once and say, "Okay, yeah, I got it." Play it through 3, 4, half dozen, whole dozen times, for a couple days anyway, just to really get it cemented in your head. Go back and refill in, because we're bound to forget little bits of the tune. Go back, fill in those gaps that develop while you sleep, things like that, and then come back to it. And really kind of repetition, and again, kind of doing it regularly. A great way to do that is to play with your friends and your neighbors, because playing with people is a lot of fun, and it'll really energize you to learn new tunes and practice what you already know. So there's a quick little spiel on tune memorization. I hope that some of that was helpful. Recovering Bassist says it's the worst to get lost in the middle of a song. Yeah, that's totally happens to everybody. You know, happens to me, happens to people all over. No matter how long you've been playing, you get lost in the middle. It just happens, and I think being able to kind of smile and roll with the punches is a great skill to have. All right, Willie from Florida. Great to have you here. Denise says, "My neighbor bought a mandolin. Any suggestions on helping him get started?" I mean, I would say, you know, if he's someone that likes to learn online, send him through my beginner series. Also, I think something that's helpful for me in figuring out how to really motivate people is figure out, you know, what drew them to the instrument in the first place. So like, "Oh, why did you pick up a mandolin? What do you want to learn? Do you want to learn pop songs or traditional music or bluegrass or Irish music?" And if they don't know, that's totally fine. Have them listen to a lot of music with mandolin in it. See what comes up for their interest, because whatever they're interested in is gonna sort of translate to what they're gonna most enjoy playing and practicing, and that could lead to different genres down the line, but really focusing in on what people are interested in from the get-go is a huge a good place to start, in my opinion. Dave says, "What do you think of the Eastman 305 mandolin for a first instrument?" It's a great instrument. Eastman makes nice instruments. Not sponsored by Eastman or anything. I just like what they do. You know, it really is going to depend on the setup of the instrument, so I'd recommend getting it from a well-reputed online or brick-and-mortar store that's going to do a solid setup job, rather than ordering it from like Amazon or some big warehouse where they're just going to get an instrument in and send it off to you without ever checking to see if the action's good and the nut height is right, all that sort of stuff, intonation. Especially with the first instrument, getting something that's playable, set up nicely and easy on your fingers is going to be one of the biggest, helps to your playing, because you can have a $5,000 mandolin that's set up really poorly and it's not going to be any fun to play, and you can get a $100 mandolin that's set up beautifully, and you're going to have that much more fun with it, and it's going to sound that much better. The recovering bassist says, tell him to be here on noon for Denise's friend who's playing the mandolin. Cool, I'm glad that's helpful. Elderly is a great place to go online. There's also the Mandolin store, the Mandolin Hut also. There's a number of places online, but if you buy it from a website that's either not a music store like Amazon or Walmart or things like that, you might get lucky. You might get a mandolin that's set up really well, but in my experience, those things come through needing some work more often than not. Whereas if you get something from Elderly or the Mandolin store, again, those sponsorships here, those are really going to help you. They're going to come to you, set up beautifully, ready to go, and you're going to have that much more fun. All right, I'll play a little bit of Louis Cyr because I had that request a while back. This is a great tune from Quebec. Louis Cyr was a strong man in the 1800s, early 1900s. Can't remember exactly, but you can look him up. I've read his Wikipedia article. He was a strong dude. Let's put it that way. Griffin's good. We're still talking about stores there in the chat. Yep. So Louis Cyr. There it is, Louis Cyr. I think it might be on my website. I can't remember. Maybe somebody can tell me if it's there or not, because I can't remember. I lose track. All right. Recovering bassist says, I still have some issues with pick direction when changing strings, not to be redundant. But no, I mean, totally. You talk about this often, but it's a work in progress, and it's great to see your progression through this. I really look forward to hearing what you say every week. But it seems like there are times when going up and down motion isn't always the best. Now, by that, do you mean that it's not? It doesn't seem like the best way to play through the tune, or it's just like it's not working for you, or are you having a feeling that there's a better pick direction out there to be had, and sort of the up and down is holding you back, or do you mean that you're still working on that up and down pattern? Let's see. Matthew says, I got an Eastman after playing a $20 garage sale Rogue for a year. The Eastman is great. Yep, definitely a step up from the Rogue. Yeah, that definitely. Eastmans I've played a lot of Eastmans over the years, and I like them a lot. Juiced has a great question. Is it worth replacing components from a cheap mandolin to make it sound better, or would you suggest just to get a better mandolin? That's hard. It kind of depends on the instrument. If you have a $50 Rogue mandolin, I wouldn't put a $50 bridge on it. That said, if you have a $500 mandolin and there's something that you're actually not liking about it, like, oh, the bridge is sharp, or it just seems poor quality, and you know, it's not set to the, it's not set on the instrument particularly well. You know, there's things you can do. You can have somebody seat the bridge on the instrument. Is going to make a lot more difference than changing the brand of bridge that you have on it. Same thing with like, what am I talking about here? Tuning machines, tuners. You know, you can get new ones. You can pay a lot of money for new tuners, but I've never put Waverleys or had an instrument with Waverleys, which are like $400 mandolin tuners. I'm sure that I've played mandolins with them, but I've never owned one. I like them. They're heavy, which is interesting. You know, I have kind of less expensive tuners. I don't even know what these are. Oh, these are Elite. So these are a replacement on this old mandolin. The old tuners kind of broke down a little bit. They actually seemed okay, but when I bought this mandolin, they had already had tuners changed, so I just left them as is. That's actually the same kind that's on my Ellis. I think they're less than $100 a set. I've never had any problem with them, so I've never felt the need to change them. Often with tuners, there's something else at play, like a slot in a nut that's cut incorrectly or is too tight. Same thing with the bridge. Tailpieces, you know, you can definitely do, you know, like a heavier tailpiece is going to affect the tone a little bit, I think. But, you know, I think for the most part, saving up, rather than putting $200 worth of new accessories on the instrument, like a new bridge and a new tuning machines and a new, you know, a nut that's made out of something fancy or like pearl or horn or something, and a solid cast tailpiece, I would take that $200, get the mandolin, as long as there's nothing like really wrong with the components you're working with. Spend that $200 on really getting the mandolin set up really nicely, and that's going to be a bigger benefit to your playing and the sound of the instrument, I think, in general. But again, it's hard to say without looking at the instrument specifically, so your mileage may vary. All right. Ooh. Peggy says, "Can you give us some tips on getting a nice smooth sound when playing? Sometimes it sounds too choppy." Yeah, definitely. I think one thing to work on is making sure you sound nice and smooth. You know, especially if you're saying sometimes it sounds choppy. That means sometimes it sounds good. So just taking a look at your own playing, and if you're playing through, take something you know really well. Could be a scale or a tune. A lot of what's going to make that smooth sound is A, really knowing the tune well. B, is having kind of good technique in the first place, being nice and relaxed, you know, having your left and right hands and arms doing what they're supposed to be doing. C is kind of picking that there's always going to be a tempo that's going to be too fast for you to play comfortably. That tempo kind of can be shifted up through practice. But, you know, finding that speed of, okay, I can play it comfortably and smoothly and have it sound great here. But if I go here, you know, like I start feeling tense. The sound comes out less smoothly, a little more choppily. You know, find that speed where you can play nice and slowly, and get a good sound, and then watch my lesson, How to Play Faster, where I talk about just kind of using a metronome a little bit and creeping up that speed a little bit at a time, so you make sure to stay nice and relaxed, and the quality of the sound coming out of the instrument is the same. You know, another thing is just kind of economy of motion that deteriorates as you get faster. So, you know, if you're playing and your fingers are staying down, then as you speed up, if your fingers, you get kind of flying fingers. then that's gonna make for a choppier sound because you're not being quite as efficient with your left hand. There's lots of things going into that involving technique and practicing with the metronome. Check out the technique and fundamentals section of my website. There's lots of lessons over there. Recovering Bassist says I also tend to hit other strings with the pick too much, ones I'm not aiming for. Yeah, I have been doing, I've been working on that myself. I think, you know, especially when going from, I was playing old time music for a long time, where I really was purposefully hitting a lot of double stops, but then going to playing Irish music, I wanted to sort of take it back down to a very like single note melody sound and no double stops. And I'd just been playing old time music so much that I had to sort of consciously take those notes out of my playing, all those double stops and drone notes and things. So you know, really keeping a keen ear out and making sure you're really hearing what you're playing. And if you hit a note like oh, I didn't actually want that, let's try that again. No, I did it again. And working through again slowly will help you get that sound you're looking for. And knowing the sound you're looking for from the get-go is a really helpful way to develop it. The Pelican 3 says, can you tell us how to get volume without getting your pick hung up in the strings? Definitely. I think one thing that'll help is, if you're not already doing this, rather than having the pick go kind of flat through the strings, because, you know, your right arm, because of proper technique, kind of bent at the elbow, flopped over the instrument, your right arm is kind of parallel and your pick is parallel to the ground. And if you tip the instrument a little bit, it puts kind of the left leading edge of your pick to go through the strings first, which kind of takes away some of that stickiness of that feeling. So if I play with that nice tipped sound, nice and smooth, not too much pick noise, and if I go flat 2, much more kind of clicky pick noise. There's a lot more resistance of my pick going through the strings and it having to work harder than I really should, in my opinion. And you know, another thing is just playing slow and gradually working up your speed. Dave says, do you ever do one-on-one lessons via Skype and FaceTime? I don't really. I have in the past, but I've kind of run out of time. There's a way that people can support me on Patreon, and at a certain level there's one time, and at a higher level recurring one-on-one Skype lessons, but it's not necessarily, you know, there's other people out there that will do Skype lessons. I just, because I run the website and I have a bunch of other stuff going, I don't have the time to do private lessons at this point. But the Mandolin Cafe has a great resource. It's like Teachers or something. It's you can look it up on the Mandolin Cafe. It's like one of the little tabs down in the middle where you see like the classified listings on the homepage. And you can see people who do Skype lessons offering their services there. Cool. Sheldon says, I replaced the nut with a tusk nut and discovered a Tortex pick really improves the sound. Yeah, and you know, that's another thing, you know, talking about picks. Like, picks are a great way to change and potentially improve. And the same thing with strings, you know. Picks are a couple bucks a piece, unless you get into like blue chips. Strings are less than $10 a piece for the most part, and then some are, you know, 12 or 15, and then if you get into like flat wounds, you can pay up to like $40, but those last a lot longer. You know, that sort of change up is a little easier than actually like replacing pieces on the instrument. That said, you know, if you want to experiment with different materials for your nut and bridge and fret material, things like that, there's all kinds of stuff to change, and it does affect the sound to some extent. Cool. Awesome. Picker's Quest, thank you so much for the very kind super chat donation. I appreciate it. It helps me put out more live streams like this every week. I love doing them and keeping my website up and running. He says, I hope you don't mind. I've been using your play-along tracks to practice frailing banjo. Thanks. Yeah, not at all. I'm always happy to hear when people are using my website and my resources to play other instruments. I use my play-along tracks. You can see right there, I've got a banjo. I've got a little pump organ. I got an accordion over here. Nope, accordion's in the shop, but I've got a bevy of instruments that I use my own play-along tracks to work with. So keep up the good work, learn new instruments, and use my resources if it helps you. Katie Hill, great tune. I can't remember how it goes, unfortunately. Okay, so we're covering bases going back to our conversation on pick direction. It says when I'm going to a different string, let's say I'm on a downstroke, it feels awkward to do an upstroke on the new string I'm going to. So like maybe if you're going down, so let's do a little pattern here on our D string. We're gonna go down, and then up on the A. So down, up on the A, down D, up D, down D, up A, down D, up D, down D, up A. And you can set up little exercises for yourself like this. There's I have some right hand warm-up exercises in the technique and fundamental section of my website where I go through doing kind of a lot of those patterns and forcing your hand to do to keep that down up pattern, because you know technically it is what you're kind of leaning towards over like straight you know, if we're just thinking very logically, like you go down through the D string, you're already just waiting to go down through the A string, but that sort of defeats the groove of the tune. So if you have, you know, if you're you know, so if you have a tune that's going to go Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, I guess. That's not a good. Let's just take that as a little phrase. It's down on the D. Wait, hold on. So what we want is we want this constant kind of groove of wooga chugga, wooga chugga, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak. Gives you that kind of danceable feeling and danceable sound coming out of your instrument. Really makes you want to like tap your foot or bob your head. However you react with the music like that. And if you do down, down, up, down, 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 up. So if you're going down, you want every other one to be strong. So if your melody is going D, A, and you go down, down, up, down, you have a strong beat on an up, which is a little awkward. Whereas if you just really keep your right arm as kind of a motor movement, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, then your downstroke is always your strong beat and your upstroke is always your weak beat, which is helpful because you kind of have gravity pulling your hand down and you're fighting gravity going up. So you have this natural, etc. And it's about that kind of overall right arm motor versus, you know, knowing that your pick is ready to do another downstroke in a row just because you're changing strings. Don says, you've done some lessons lately on embellishments, chordal jig, etc. They're great. I imagine they're more effort than your regular lessons, but more, please. Yes, I have. There's a bunch of lessons. There might even be one more coming out. I can't quite remember what's coming down the line here, but there will be more. They are more work. They're actually, they're an expensive lesson to make because I don't do the transcription myself. I have my friend who's a great musician. We are actually, little sneak peek for you live supporters, we actually just recorded an album. My friend Noah Fishman and I recorded an album a couple weeks ago. We still are only working with raw tracks, but there's going to be an album coming out probably sometime before the end of the year. Some music videos, things like that. We both play mandolin. I play a little bit of tenor guitar. Noah plays electric and acoustic upright bass. Really fun. We do a bunch of fiddle tunes, some originals, some... we actually do chordal jig. But Noah does the transcriptions for me because it's a lot of work and I don't have the time between doing all the stuff that I already do. So I'm sort of paying Noah as a transcription service, and he's really good at it, and he can just kind of fire right through, and I'd be sitting there scratching my head and cursing. He's a very professional musician. He actually has a transcription service. If you go to my website and go to the I think it's in the links section. I don't know. There's a link. Oh, in the contact section of my website. His email address is there. If you ever really want to hear a song or a transcription of a solo, he can do that for you. And he's very reasonable as far as transcription services go. He's very good. He did all of mine. But yes, I do want to do more. It's just I have to pay for the transcription itself, and it's an added effort and cost. But I will definitely be doing more in the future. Whoops, the chat just jumped. James says, hello from Austin. Do you ever play an octave mandolin? I've been really enjoying one recently. Is there anything you'd recommend doing differently with an octave mandolin from a regular one? Let me grab an instrument real quick. So, I do play some octave mandolin style instruments. This is a tenor guitar, which is a 4-string guitar that is tuned pretty much like a mandolin. But what I do is I tune it G, D, A, and then a D instead of an E up top. And it sort of creates this very drony sound. So I would say if you're interested in this sound, I actually have a website that does not get updated regularly. In fact, it hasn't been updated in years, called tenorguitarlessons.com. But I do a lot of this sort of stuff with tenor guitars and octave mandolin style instruments tuned to G, D, A, D. A lot of accompaniment. So that's one thing to do. Another thing, with the longer scale length, you can play it just G, D, A, E, like an octave below mandolin, regular E string up high. I think a lot of the beauty, at least for me, of an octave mandolin is that nice ringing sound of those open strings, rather than playing... then you can really kind of leave some strings ringing. So if you get into playing in other keys using a capo, if you want to play an F, learn to use a capo on the 3rd fret and play out of D positions. get that same nice ringing sound. It's something that guitar players do a lot, but mandolin players don't capo for the most part because the scale length is so short, and it got a bad rap in bluegrass because Bill Monroe didn't do it, so nobody should be allowed to, which I think is kind of silly. I use a capo occasionally on a mandolin. It's a lot of fun. You get those open strings. It's just a different sound. It's good to be able to play up the neck and in different keys without a capo, but especially, and it's, you know, there's nothing wrong with hitting those open strings and you really liking the sound of the open strings. Andy Irvine, great Irish mandolin player, would capo up, and especially with those bigger instruments, you know, the beauty of those open strings ringing is great. So experiment with the capo. Yeah, so Recovering Bassist says, I want an octave mandolin, but I can't imagine making making chop chords on one. Yeah, you're not going to be able to get that bluegrass chop chord on that big of an instrument, but there's lots of other, you know, so instead of playing like this G, you know, you're not going to be able to get that G chop shape. That would be impossible. But you can find kind of more bar shapes. And you can still get that choppy sound. Etc. Cool for jazz, cool for bluegrassy stuff. A lot of fun. The Pelican 3 says, can you post more bluegrass lessons that aren't copyrighted? Definitely. I've got some song ideas in my head. Just gotta make them. It's been on my list for a while, and I think in the next batch of lessons that I make, I will make some song lessons, because those are a lot of fun. That's a good question. Recovering Bassist says, who's your favorite bluegrass mandolin player, Pelican? Oh, Medicine Man says, thank you so much for putting time and energy into this. Gladly. I love doing it. Thank you for watching along and following along. Wreck the Old 97. I'll look into that one. That might be a copyright-free one. Maury River Blues. I don't know that one. I'll have to look it up. Cool. Hayden's been enjoying the website. I appreciate it. Thank you for the kind words, and thanks for watching and playing music. Just keep up the good work and get out there and share the music. Peter, thank you so much for the Super Chat donation. I appreciate it very much. Dave says, is that, being the tenor guitar, the same tuning as the Irish bouzouki? For the most part, yep. Irish bouzouki, same idea, often double courses and with octave strung strings like a 12-string guitar would have. They often play in GD-A-D, which is this tuning. Some people will also tune A-D-A-D. A little bit more kind of an open droning sound. Yeah, try out that GD-A-D tuning in capo. Again, tenorguitarlessons.com, all one word. Has a kind of an introductory series of videos on this tuning. It's on a tenor guitar, but you can use, as long as you're tuned GD-A-D, it doesn't matter if you're playing bouzouki, octave mandolin, tenor guitar, things like that. And I talk a little bit about capos. Recovering Bassist says, would you recommend a tenor guitar over an octave mandolin for any reason or no, as far as owning one or the other? Let me get one more instrument. So it depends on the sound you're looking for more than anything. So here's an octave mandolin. So this is like kind of a pancake style octave mandolin. They also come in shape. I know Eastman started making one that's sort of like a big archtop A-style mandolin that I'd love to try at some point. But you know, it's just a very different sound. Whoa, this is also very out of tune. You know, these kind of double-strung instruments are going to have that shimmer. wow, that's really out of tune. So it's totally kind of like a sound quality decision. Eventually I'll have this thing in tune. So this is also tuned GD-AD, so it's a slightly different tuning than a straight octave mandolin. But I'll give you a little sound comparison. Just gonna pull up my meter so I'm sure I'm not. So very kind of shimmery, ringy, versus a very kind of warm sounding. It doesn't project in the same way. So like versus and then some octave mandolins, more specifically bazookas a lot of the time, will have that sort of octaved sound. On a couple of the strings. So there's a quick little intro to the world of octave mandolins and tenor guitars. You know, I think it's a different sound. I love the tenor guitar. I do a lot of accompaniment with it, playing behind fiddle players. It's a nice warm sound. It doesn't kind of interfere with the sound of the fiddle as much, in my opinion. But that said, it's also not quite as twinkly and beautiful in that way, and it doesn't quite cut through the same way melodically. Uncle Bobby, thank you so much for the Super Chat donation. All right, and Don as well. Super Chats coming in left and right. I really appreciate all the support. Couldn't do it without you guys. Speaking of Irish, Parting Glass is another song to put up. Yep, that's a great song. I don't know, that might be traditional. It's old anyway, I think. But yeah, it's hard to know what stuff's kind of recently composed and what's not. How about Lonesome Feeling? Do you know that one? I don't think I do know Lonesome Feeling, at least not by name. Kind of out of touch with some of the bluegrass stuff. Fair and Tender Ladies, great song. Don says, thanks for the lessons and tunes, great resource in combination with my live instructor. Cool, yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying it, and it's good to have, you know, I think it's nice to have multiple sources, so, you know, like working with, you know, my lessons aren't going to be the replacement of, like, you know, really going to someone in person and seeing what they have to offer you, because that's you know, having someone there to really like give you one-on-one instruction and talk about technique in a certain way can be very helpful too. But I'm glad you're enjoying the website, and thank you for the support. Yeah, Recovering Bassist says, I like them both. Tenor guitar has a really rich and full sound, but the octave mandolin has a cool mid-range cutting through tone. Definitely. So, you know, if I'm playing like in an Irish session, for example, and there's a 6-string guitar, you know, kind of steel string guitar, that's covering this very, you know, this thing pretty much just sounds like a guitar. So if there's a 6-string guitar playing, or, either in standard tuning or dadgad, which is a popular Irish tuning, then I'd want to pick up something like this, you know, and maybe even I can capo up, you know, so if they're playing in D, I can play down here. But I can also capo up and say, okay, G, A, B, C sharp, D. Capo up to the 7th fret and play out of G position, and I get even sparklier kind of G chords. Versus playing that down here. So you get some options, and you know, again, going back to the capo, great use of a capo is playing the same idea, or accompanying a song in, you know, it's in G or in D, and it's always in the same key, but you can capo up and try some different chord voicings and sort of see how it reacts with all the other instruments in the playing. So, you know, if there's a guitar player playing in the Irish session already, I'll pick up an octave mandolin and add that, rather than adding the same sort of range and sound, which would be a tenor guitar. How about some O'Carrollin? Yeah, I have got a lot of requests to do more O'Carrollin pieces on my website. Again, it's on the list. I don't know that many O'Carrollin tunes off the top of my head. There's a couple that I follow in Irish sessions, but I have Shebake Shemore on my website. But that's the one I'm most familiar with, and it's a whole huge and beautiful repertoire of music that I would love to learn more of, and hopefully I can learn some of them and teach them on the site. Cool. So William says, I learned learning on your website. I learned to pluck the G and then strum the rest. So I think you're talking about like that sort of sound. But I think maybe what you're talking about is like, how do I get this sound? I have a series on my website called Strum Patterns. It's in the Technique and Fundamentals section of the website. I think it's close to the bottom, but I'm not honestly sure. But you can also just search for Strum Pattern Series, I think, on my website. And I go through some of that cross-picking, chop chords, other sort of things like that will sort of give you some of those different strum pattern sounds. So I'd recommend checking those out. Sal's Got Mud Between Her Toes. That's a great tune that I can never start, but I've played it, and if other people can get it going, I can usually follow along. Kevin says, O'Carrollin on the mandolin is something I would also like to hear. Cool. Glad to hear it. I think I feel like somebody put out an album of O'Carrollin tunes on the mandolin. I can't remember who. But I think I've heard of one. I haven't heard it myself, but that could be something. I'm sure if you looked up O'Carrollin mandolin, you'd find a lot of great stuff either on YouTube or maybe some album that somebody's put out that I'm kind of blanking on. Matthew, thank you so much for the Super Chat donation. All right, they keep rolling in, and I appreciate every one of them. Maybe I'll play... get a mandolin back since this is a mandolin website. Play another tune, but these are all great. Oh, we're actually almost out of time, and I've totally spaced on today's play-along song. So let's do that. Get your mandolin out and get nice and in tune. We're playing Britches Full of Stitches today. So every week we pick a tune to do next week and then kind of jam along with it a little bit. So last week we picked Britches Full of Stitches. It's in the key of A. It's an Irish polka. And the way this works is if you don't know the tune, see if you can kind of pick it up. I'll play the melody some. I'll play the chords so you can play the melody while I'm backing you up, and you can back me up while I'm playing the chords. But take this time to learn the tune a little bit better if you don't know it already. If you do know it, try working on adding some double stops and ornamentation, things like that, or work on some improvisation. So, Britches full of stitches. I won't go too fast, don't worry, and we'll pick up with this a little bit. Don asked the questions, what is O'Carolan? O'Carolan, Turlock O'Carolan was a blind harpist in the 17th century, 1600s, I think. Maybe earlier. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. But he wrote a lot of music, 18th century. All right, Sean beat me to it. He wrote a lot of beautiful music that's kind of a big part of the Irish musical tradition at this point. And there's probably thousands of pieces that are attributed to him that he wrote over the years. A lot of really great, beautiful music that musicians that play all kinds of instruments love to play. All right, so Britches full of stitches, key of A. 1. So I'll play it through once, maybe like let's both play the melody together, and then I'll play the chords. You can play the melody. We'll swap. I'll play the melody. You play the chords like that, and then we'll maybe go out on the melody together. 1, 2, 3, 4. B part. B2. I'll take the melody, you play chords. You play the melody. B part. Play the melody, I'll play the harmony. B part. Second B. All right, there it is, a little Britches full of stitches. Hope you enjoyed playing that one. If you didn't know that one this time, this lesson is always archived. You can come back, learn the tune, play along with it next time, or just learn the tune and use the play along tracks on the website. But it's about time I head out, but we still have a little bit of work to do because we need a tune for next week. It's actually going to be a couple weeks from now, not next week and not the week after, but I think maybe the last weekend in September. I've got a couple camps I'm doing. If any of you are in New England and want to come to a camp, I'm doing a bluegrass camp this weekend in Searsport, Maine, which is kind of out near Acadia National Park. But if you're in Maine and want to do a bluegrass camp this coming, not this weekend, but next weekend, or Old Time Festival the weekend after, shoot me an email. I'll hook you up with all the information, and it'll be a lot of fun. Sean says, what mandolin that? It looks a lot like my 1920 A4. He says, the sweetest, roundest tone of anything I've ever owned. Yes, this is a 1924 A, so it's not the A Junior, which is kind of the lowest rank, or the A4. You've got the A4, which is kind of the highest in like kind of the higher the number, the prettier and the more attention to detail they had. So this is kind of one step up. It's just the straight A, 1924. Flowers of Edinburgh next week. That's a good tune. People know that one, or it's kind of got a lot of notes, but it's a classic tune that a lot of people know. We could do that one. Unless other things come in, that sounds like a good idea. We'll let a couple more suggestions come in just in case. I know there were, in the past, I've had some requests that I've been unable to do, and if I see one of those, I'll maybe take that. But Flowers of Edinburgh, going once, going twice. It's a little delayed, so I can't actually say going once, going twice, gone, because there's like a 20-second delay on my end. So it can't be quite that fast-paced. But John Hardy, another great tune. That one's not on my website, so I'm going to pass on that one. But I should add that to my website because it's a great tune and a great song. All right, let's do Flowers of Edinburgh. So it's a notier tune than we've done in the past, but it's great. It's a really common tune that a lot of people will know. I'm going to have to brush up on this one because it's been a long time since I've played it. But it's a real common tune and a great one to know. So, next week, Flowers of Edinburgh. It's on my website. Try to learn the melody. If you already know it, work on some double stops or improvisation, things like that. Dale said Devil's Dream. Maybe another week down the line. I just put out that lesson, so give people a time to pick that one up. But maybe in a couple weeks. But let's go with Flowers of Edinburgh this time around. And yeah, have fun with it. Again, it's over on my website, MandoLessons.com. That's all the time I have today, friends. So thank you so much for joining in, and I will see you in a couple weeks. Not next weekend, not the weekend after, but the weekend after that, I'll be back for another one of these. Flowers of Edinburgh will be the tune of the week, and I hope you all have a great rest of your weekend. And keep on picking, keep up the good work. See you again soon. Bye.